Hey minions, welcome to Crank It Up. I'm Jim Price, and on this episode of the Gauntlet, I want to talk about robot vampires. It would be easy to think that this is just a combo where I'm taking one of the best factions and combining it with one of the worst. I wouldn't necessarily blame you for thinking that, but that's not the case here. Sometimes I get accused of not understanding how synergy works, and people take it upon themselves to tell me what it is, like I don't know. But I think that there are multiple types of synergy, one of which is making bad cards relevant. And I think that really sums up robot vampires in that each faction has bad cards that suddenly have usefulness when given to the other, and it's particularly deceptive until you try it out. When it comes to bad cards, it's natural to think of the vampires. Fledgling vampires, your most frequent minion, incentivizes you to play from behind, but doesn't offer much of a reward for doing so. The heavy drinker usually results in a net loss of power, as most minions are 2 power and you only gain 1 power. But the robots also have some bad cards, including one that I almost always toss away when Tech Center pushes me over the limit, Microbot Archive. I love card draw, but this card almost never fires because it's hard to waste a play on a subpar minion when you have better options. However, vampires can destroy their own minions, and the robots provide good targets. If I destroy a Microbot Reclaimer, I lose 1 power, but gain a power, so no net loss. But I draw a card from the archive like an Enchantress. Plus, the Ancient Lord doubles the first counter I get, so I'm actually netting a power. Of course, I am losing a minion, and a Microbot, which can get buffed to 3 power, and also provides power to the alpha. But it allows me to pivot on a base and provides card draw that the vampires desperately need, and helps get to the alpha, which is really important for the vampires. You also have the Microbot guards as heavy drinker targets, as well as the Microbot archive itself after it has served its purpose. I don't think of Crack of Dusk as a bad card, just bad for the vampires. But for the robots, it can mean instantly playing your Microbot alpha multiple times, or a fixer to generate an extra minion play while you still have your regular minion play. I think the ability to pivot and the ability to play the Microbot Alpha more times is better than the extra power that the Alpha would receive, which is often overkill anyway. So I'm okay with destroying some of my low-powered Microbots. But I do think that Mad Monster Party is a bad card, because it works completely against the vampire strategy of adding power counters. To make this card work, you need a series of minions who don't have any power counters, which the robots excel at providing. Because the robots do not provide power counters at all, and because the Ancient Lord doubles these counters, this is essentially +2 power to all robots and maybe a few vampires, and that power persists. This makes the robots able to spread out and pursue a multi-base attack, and even if they do not break 2 bases in a turn, the fact that the power lingers makes this better than a card like Super Future Space Armor Power, where it's all or nothing. When I play robots, I am always looking to cascade bases, and this really helps them along. One of the ways that I often break multiple bases is staging many minions on one base and dropping the alpha on another. Often, fixers are involved, and the truth is that the alpha is needed to globalize the fixer boost so that both bases could be in range. But when one base breaks, that global boost goes away, and the other can no longer break. But this is where a terrible card comes into play: Buffet. Buffet requires the vampires to have a multi-minion presence on a separate base other than the one you just won, and they struggle to win that first base anyway, making it very hard to use this card. But this is a pretty perfect way to kelp off an alpha base. Because the alpha draws power from minions on any base, you can win a base with fewer minions, leaving most of your minions in play. Buffet can essentially provide +1 power for everyone else, and following an initial Mad Monster Party play of +2 power, it's actually easy to break all 3 bases in a turn in 2-player. One of the problems with Nukebot is that you essentially have to destroy it yourself, which I've described as being near impossible for the robots because of the minions required by Microbot Guard. If you had the minion quantity to do it, you probably shouldn't do it, and you should just win the base instead. And opponents don't want to blow up their own minions. I've noticed that Nukebot is very often misread, as players think it destroys all minions, even their own. But it does not, just opposing minions, which makes this a great trap for Heavy Drinker and the Count. You can stage Nukebot on a base early, and players know that whatever they play there will be lost because Heavy Drinker can eat Nukebot. You will lose 5 power, but will take out more than 5 power with the destruction. The 2 counters lessen the blow, and you can regain some of that power with the Count. This is another pivot style play, but one that really slows down opponents and gives Nukebot the rare opportunity to be anything other than a printed power drop. Of course, we can't talk about bad cards without talking about Cull the Weak, which only lets you discard minions. This can be good late game, but really works against the vampires because you are already eating your own minions, so you are likely to be minion starved. So having 8 extra minions from the robots, particularly low-powered ones that are situational anyway, actually works as discard fodder for Cull the Weak. I've used Tech Center on one turn to load up on cards, discarding some less useful actions so that I can stock my hands with minions, only to make Cull the Weak be a very powerful finisher. Using the same spread style strategy as before, you can also dump a bunch of minions to make the alpha stronger, leaving your other minions in play, allowing Tech Center to regenerate your hand after the Cull the Weak attack. It also helps that the Microbot Reclaimer can shuffle in some of the cards you just discarded, which reduces the sting even though you are still thinning your hand. Because the robots can already play catch-up, you don't need to worry about using the fledgling vampires that way, and they become easy discard fodder for Cull the Weak or even your Heavy Drinkers. You can use them to simply help bring out the Ancient Lord, which is so crucial to this team. This brings us to the first weakness, an over-reliance on the Ancient Lord. The Ancient Lord can already be difficult to play, and the robots won't do anything to help with that. Not directly. But the Ancient Lord must come out because the extra counter is a necessity when you consider the sheer quantity of minions it will affect. It turns the self-sacrificial plays into net gains and sets up some very powerful plays. Both the robots and vampires lack singularly powerful minions to protect it, so you have to be cognizant of that. Fortunately, the Heavy Drinker can destroy a minion on any base, so that can help reinforce your defenses. You need to be careful placing that extra counter per turn, because you need the Ancient Lord out for the long haul. Dinner Date and Crack of Dusk become extremely important as they get you halfway there towards bringing out the Ancient Lord. The next weakness is that you will struggle with your action plays, as there are not a lot of good candidates to play on the average turn. Buffet is a special that requires the proper circumstance. Mad Monster Party is your big payoff card. Crack of Dusk is generally saved for replaying the alpha over and over again. Cull the Weak is saved for the end of the game usually. Other than destroying small minions, there's not a lot you can do. Summon Wolves would need to be drawn early if it can be effective, but the robots only have 2 actions to bring to the fight. That means you may be wasting half of your turn often, as there are some setup cards that can work in an early game context, but most are held in reserve. Drawing your cards in the wrong order can really hurt you. In fact, there's an odd phenomenon that occurs to me a lot when I play vampires, where I draw only their minions. Vampires are one of the worst factions for bad starting hands, as drawing multiple fledgling vampires and Heavy Drinkers usually has you punting your first turn. This happens to me constantly, and has kept me out of the game as long as 2 to 3 or even 4 turns. The robots can catch up, but a vampire-only deck may not be able to keep up with fast factions. But the robots also bring their own weaknesses and have an extremely glaring one in the form of Eliza. Robots come to a screeching halt in front of her as they rely on your extra plays. Fortunately, a card like Cull the Weak provides an opportunity to rush the base and break it quickly, and you have to avoid chaining all of your Zapbots together in a single turn. It's what makes Mad Monster Party so powerful, as you can use a single action to generate a ton of power, which Eliza cannot block. I would hate to see these 2 teams meet in the first round, because I really think robot vampires will surprise people. Just because there are better robot combos out there doesn't make this a bad combo, and the strength that it contains is subtle but very real. Before the Titan, this is a decent combo, but the Titan really elevates them to a level where they can compete in March Smashness. What do you think of the robot vampire chances? Let me know in the comments. That's it for this team. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let's shut it down.